Unit 7, Evolution. In this video, we will cover cladograms, Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, the principle of maximum parsimony, homology versus analogy, and the endosymbiotic theory. A cladogram is a diagram that depicts a pattern of shared characteristics. Within the tree, a clade is a group of species that includes an ancestral species and its descendants. A cladogram alone does not imply evolutionary history, but shared characteristics due to common ancestry may form the basis of a phylogenetic tree. Here is an example of a cladogram. We start off with sharks, and then two ray-finned fish, then two amphibians, then primates, which also branches off into rodents and rabbits, then crocodiles, then lastly birds. Next, we will be going over Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. P represents the allelic frequency of the dominant trait. Q represents the allelic frequency of the recessive trait. Thus, P plus Q equals 1. P squared equals the genomic frequency of homozygous dominant organisms. Q squared represents the genomic frequency of homozygous recessive organisms. 2pq represents the genomic frequency of heterozygous organisms. Thus, p squared plus 2pq plus q squared equals 1. Let's take a look at a practice problem with sickle cell anemia. If the disease is a recessive trait and 20% of a population has the allele for the disease, what percent of the population will have the disease? %20 of the population has the allele, so Q equals 0.2. Since Q squared equals the number of homozygous recessive individuals, 0.2 squared will give us the percentage of the population that has the disease. Therefore, 4% is the answer. Let's move on to the principle of maximum parsimony. According to the principle of maximum parsimony, the simplest explanation that is consistent with the facts should be investigated first. In the case of trees based on morphological characters, the tree that requires the fewest evolutionary events is the most parsimonious. Similarly, the most parsimonious of phylograms based on DNA sequences are the ones with the least base changes. Let's move on to homology versus analogy. Homology is the similarity in characteristics resulting from a shared ancestry. Analogy is the similarity between two species that is due to convergent evolution. An example of homologous structures is the human forelimb and a bat's wing. Organisms with homologous structures are more closely related to each other on the tree of life than those with analogous structures. An example of analogous structures is a shark's fin, a penguin's wing, and a dolphin's flipper. Although the anatomical structures may look similar and even perform the same functions, they are a product of convergent evolution. Convergent evolution is when two unrelated species undergo several changes and adaptations to become more similar. The species may live in similar environments in different parts of the world that favor the same adaptations. Let's move on to the endosymbiotic theory. Endosymbiosis is when one organism lives inside the other. The endosymbiotic theory describes how a large host cell and ingested bacteria could easily become dependent on one another for survival, resulting in a permanent relationship. It also describes the evidence that mitochondria and chloroplasts were once primitive bacterial cells. Through evolution, mitochondria and chloroplasts have become more specialized, and now they cannot live outside the cell. Thank you for watching.